This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know how philosophy textbooks always present the history of thought in these neat labeled boxes? Today, we are cracking open one of the biggest ones, British empiricism.
It's the classic setup, isn't it? You have the rationalists on the continent, Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza, and then in Britain you get the empiricists, Locke, Berkeley, and Hume.
And it makes it sound like this whole movement just, burst into existence out of nowhere in the late 17th century.
Exactly. Like it was a purely English invention.
And our mission for this deep dive, based on the sources you've brought us, is to show that John Locke did not just invent this approach in a vacuum.
Not at all.
We're going to track a practical, experience-first mindset in England that stretches back, well, over 1,000 years, and we'll uncover some surprising international influences that completely reframe the story.
That's right. We have documentation confirming that the core principle, respecting experience over some abstract, purely theoretical argument, was being built brick by intellectual brick in England long, long before the Enlightenment.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're tracing the lineage of this empirical attitude starting incredibly far back, all the way in the 8th century.
You have to, because your sources suggest the intellectual fire for the revival of learning actually started in England and then spread to the continent.
Which is the opposite of how we usually think about it.
It is. We have to begin with a man named Alcuin of York. He lived around 735 to 804.
Alcuin of York.
He was from Northumbria, what's now northern England, and he became the central intellectual figure leading Charlemagne's palace school. He was absolutely instrumental in preserving classical learning and systematizing education during what we call the Carolingian Renaissance.
So the groundwork for later English rationalism and even the university tradition at places like Canterbury and Oxford, that was effectively imported from England to Europe, not the other way around.
Precisely. But we can go even older.
Yep.
An often overlooked figure in early British thought is Pelagius. We're talking 4th to 5th century.
Oh.
Now, he was known for theology, but his impact on the future intellectual attitude is massive. He really emphasized free will and ethical effort. He famously clashed with Augustine over the idea of original sin.
Okay, hold on. How does a theological argument about free will 1,000 years earlier connect to John Locke's studying sensation?
It's a great question. It's because this early insistence on individual human action, rather than just divine grace or some predetermined fate, that is philosophically crucial.
How so?
It creates a starting point where human capabilities, including our ability to see, to touch, our individual experience, are taken seriously. Seriously, as a reliable source of truth and moral direction.
Ah, I see. So it's about valuing human practice over pure abstraction. That attitude sets the stage.
It sets the stage.
Yeah.
And after centuries of this underlying respect for human action and practical effort, the empirical seed really starts to crystallize within the medieval university system.
So let's jump ahead to the Middle Ages, specifically the English scholastic tradition.
Right. And here we see a shift from the Canterbury School, which was more focused on integrating faith and reason, in the style of Anselm of Canterbury.
He was Italian but became the archbishop.
He was, and he established that early scholastic method in England. But the shift was towards the Oxford School. Oxford became much more analytical and critically experimental.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the true forerunners of empiricism start to emerge here. You've got two intellectual giants who provided the tools. First up, the observational pioneer, Roger Bacon.
Roger Bacon, yes. A Franciscan friar from around the 13th century. He was almost fanatical about observation. He insisted on observation and experimentation, what he called experientia, as the only way to gain certain knowledge.
So he was flatly rejecting just accepting ancient authorities like Aristotle.
Completely. Our sources hold him up as a true pioneer of the scientific spirit because he was demanding empirical proof centuries before the Renaissance. He wanted to see the results with his own eyes.
So Bacon provides the method, go and look at the facts. But then you need a concept that says those specific individual facts are more important than big abstract ideas.
And that's where William of Ockham comes in.
From the 14th century. And he was actually English.
An Englishman from Surrey, yes. And he championed nominalism. Now that's a big word for a simple but revolutionary concept. Only individual concrete things are real.
Abstract universals like humanity or justice.
They're just names, nomina, just labels we invent. By forcing philosophy to deal only with specific individual facts, he automatically makes sensory experience the most reliable starting point.
But wasn't Occam's razor just a tool to simplify theories? I mean, how can we be sure it wasn't just a theological move to protect the mysteries of faith, rather than a truly empirical one?
That's a sharp question, and the sources confirm it was.
Mm.
Well, it was both. By separating theology, which is about faith, from philosophy, which is about reason, he freed reason to deal only with the physical world.
The world of individual objects and facts you can access with your senses.
Exactly. So if knowledge has to begin with specific, observable facts, then the importance of your senses is automatically elevated. The path was cleared. Individual facts from Occam, leading to disciplined observation from Roger Bacon.
And that trajectory leads us straight to the immediate scientific context of the 17th century.
Correct. Francis Bacon is the one who systematizes this entire intellectual tradition. In his famous work, Novum Organum, he formalizes the inductive method.
Which is the idea that knowledge has to move step by step from specific observations, data points, up to general laws.
Can I give a quick example?
Please.
Say you want to study the nature of heat. Instead of deducing it from abstract principles, you inductively gather every single instance of heat you can find. Sunlight, fire, friction, chemical reactions, everything.
Okay.
Then you systematically rule out everything that is not always present when heat is present until you're left with the one constant quality, in this case motion or vibration, that defines it.
That systematic data-first approach. It's the foundation of modern science.
It is. And this whole culture was formalized by the Royal Society in 1660, emphasizing shared observations and experiments. It was the perfect intellectual and cultural predecessor for John Locke, who was writing his major work soon after.
Yes, but here's where you point out a critical detour, one that challenges that whole British empiricism label.
Right, because while this long English tradition is undeniable, why do we call it a fixed national school of thought?
So we've got this long tradition, but is the label itself just a convenient oversimplification?
Our sources confirm that the term British empiricism was largely a didactic construction, a teaching tool. It was created by Immanuel Kant centuries later.
Kant. He needed a clear opposition, a kind of straw man, to define his own philosophy against.
Exactly. His critical philosophy was meant to reconcile the two positions.
So he essentially created a filing cabinet for history, put Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz in the rationalist drawer.
And Locke, Berkeley, and Hume in the empiricist drawer.
It's a great analogy. A useful organizational tool, but a poor description of the actual history.
A very poor description. At the time, the UK had incredibly diverse thinkers. You had Platonic idealists like Thomas More and radical materialists like Thomas Hobbes. And crucially, the continent had its own strong empiricists, like the French sensationalist Condillac.
So since that Kantian category is flawed, we have to ask the real question. If Locke wasn't just following Francis Bacon, who was the single most critical mind that shaped his actual philosophical framework.
Locke's empiricism was a brilliant synthesis. He took that English tradition of careful induction and he merged it with a powerful continental idea, sensationalism.
Sensationalism.
And the evidence points to a French philosopher and priest, Pierre Gassendi, as his deepest influence.
A Frenchman at the heart of British empiricism. That completely reframes how we look at Locke's starting point.
He does.
So what was Gassendi's critical contribution that Locke absorbed?
Gassendi revived atomism and was the major force pushing back against Cartesian rationalism in France. While Francis Bacon gave Locke the method, the induction, Gassendi gave him the source of knowledge. He asserted unequivocally that all knowledge originates in sensation.
That's the core principle. The idea that the mind is a tabula rasa, a blank slate filled only by experience.
And that comes directly from the sensationalist school.
What made Gassendi such a perfect fit for Locke and the English scientific community at the time?
His model was crucial because it allowed sensation-based scientific knowledge to coexist with religious faith. It was a philosophy that didn't threaten piety, but still prioritized empirical facts.
A perfect middle ground.
And here's the documented connection. We know Locke read Gassendi's collected works, the Opera Omnia, but even more directly, he learned Gassendi's philosophy through his employer, Robert Boyle.
Robert Boyle, the famous chemist and theologian, the father of modern chemistry.
The very same. Locke served as Boyle's assistant and secretary for years. Boyle was a known supporter of Gassendi's experiential view, and he embodied that precise, measured, experimental spirit of the Royal Society.
So Boyle taught Locke the how.
He taught Locke the craftsmanship of knowledge, how to observe, how to record, how to draw careful incremental conclusions.
So Locke's famous essay concerning human understanding, the whole concept of the mind being built from sense data, it isn't a purely British invention at all. It's a synthesis,
It's a psychological application of the best European thought available.
a fusion of three powerful forces.
Absolutely. It's best viewed as the fusion of 1. Gassendi's sensationalism, providing the sense data model; 2. Francis Bacon's inductive method, providing the analytical structure; and 3. Robert Boyle's careful scientific attitude, which disciplined the whole application.
What a transformative deep dive. We start in the 8th century with Alcuin and Pelagius, and that foundational emphasis on human agency. We saw that tradition sharpened by Roger Bacon's insistence on observation and Occam's focus on individual, concrete facts.
Right.
And then we witnessed that great English tradition synthesized with the continental sensationalism of Gassendi, all mediated by the scientific rigor of Robert Boyle.
The takeaway here is, I think, profound. The strength of English thought was not some single, isolated national philosophy, but its consistent, centuries-old respect for observation, experience, and practical application.
And Locke just perfectly captured that momentum.
He did, but he did it by integrating a pan-European scientific trend into a coherent psychological model.
Indeed, it's the how to think, not just the what to think, that gets passed down. And as your sources suggest, the most important influence might not be the books a philosopher reads, but the attitude of their mentors, that craftsmanship of knowledge.
That care and measured approach is what truly defined the transition to modern empiricism.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought for your own life and career. We often learn the most valuable intellectual skills, the way we approach problems, synthesize information, not from abstract principles, but from watching others. If you had to pick one person whose attitude fundamentally shaped the way you approach your own knowledge or work, the person who taught you the craftsmanship of what you do, who would it be and why? Think about that lineage the next time you open a textbook.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.